Ready? Okay. It is 2 o'clock and this meeting is called to order. Our roll call is that all 4 of our current trustees are here, our attorney is here, our director, and assistant director, and business manager are all here. So we will go right into discussion on policies pursuant to the Children's School and Library Protection Act, starting with children in the library policy. So we can go seriatim through this, although most all of my questions had to do with the age. So what age do you guys think is appropriate to be in the library? Do you agree with 12 or Trustee Robinson?
Well, my first question also is going to be, where did that come from? Like before it was 9 and now it says 12. So I'm just curious where that change came from and the reason it happened. Director?
Yeah, it's not the most critical part of the policy per se. I think just trying to decide on what the most reasonable. So basically, the unattended child. It's an unattended child policy kind of scenario. I've heard from council, there isn't an actual law in Idaho regarding unattended children. You know, some states will have it at like 7 or 8 and others will have other things, but there isn't one as far as I can tell. It really just speaks to at what age are we allowing unattended children to be in there. There are some laws regarding firearms where, you know, an 11-year-old can do certain things versus, you know, how close a parent needs to be near to them when they're engaged in that activity. So again, it to me was a reasonable number, given the fact that there's a law on the books now that governs minors. So just setting the number there. But again, to me, it's not the critical part of, if it goes back to, I guess it'd be 10 and up or 9 and under, whatever it was before. Yeah, it is not, it's really up to the trustees, I guess, to decide where they would like to apply an unattended child policy in the building.
I hate to infantilize kids, but on the other hand, I'm not the librarian that has to deal with sugared up kids running around the library booths. So I'm willing to do 12, also willing to do younger. Do we have other input? Trustee Claus?
I think the question here is, for the age is how old do they have to be to have a parent with them? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Or if we're talking about any other aspects of this?
Well, I thought we'd start with that because there's like 5 or so instances of that, and that would clear up maybe a lot of them.
So a couple of things, I guess I remember when I was a Boy Scout at 11, you know, I was doing some camp and I thought I was independent, and I can't imagine nowadays 12-year-olds thinking they're less dependent. But we heard from Pinehurst the last meeting that there are actually a lot of children that get out of school when school gets out and they come there and wait for their parents. So those would, are we going to try to accommodate that? I used to do the same thing in our little town. When our grade school basketball practice was over, I'd go over to the library and I'd be there and call on the phone, and my parents would come, and my mom would come get me. But I think a lot of people do that, but if this goes through, you would be prohibiting that, I think.
So did you have a preferred age, or does it matter?
I think it should be more like 8 or 9, but I know there's some pretty feisty 9-year-olds throw fits, but I don't really know what the librarians experience.
Director?
I just want, so tied into that part of policy is that before it used to say a 14-year-old like caregiver could accompany that age. So that's not in here now. So I think those two things have to be thought together. I wasn't thinking along the lines of sugared up children, because it has more to do with who's supervising the child. So if we're saying 9-year-olds is the unintended, so 10, or I guess it's 9, or so 9-year-olds up is unintended, that's okay. That's what we're saying. And who's supervising the 0 to 9? Because before it says a care, in other words, a 14-year-old sibling would be allowed to supervise that 8-year-old. So, which is not in this part as well. So I mean, this policy is saying this, you're supervised by a parent or legal guardian. So I'm just saying that if we do, I'm totally fine with me to lower the age. I wasn't thinking of it along the lines of, but I think the bigger issue is who is responsible or obligated to take care of that child who we're saying needs to be attended to at that age, whatever age that is. So, again, I didn't think we would necessarily need to belabor the age. I'm totally fine to have it set at whatever age, the trustees feel is best. The bigger issue is who's supervising that child, that age group.
Trustee Young?
Yeah, mine's more of a question, not necessarily for the director. Is there an age in Idaho that in which a child can or can't be left at home alone? And is there a certain age where a child is allowed to babysit? I don't know what those are, but that would probably be a little bit helpful. So if you can't leave a child at home, maybe that's under 10 or 9, well, then that would help us. I'm thinking, for no particular scientific reason, I'm thinking more like a 10-year-old here rather than 12. I think whatever it was before, 8 or 9 is maybe a little on the young side, but I would think, again, based on nothing in particular, just 10 sounds reasonable to me. But I think the babysitting combination babysitter, I'd like to know where that is more or less, because I think a parent could probably be charged with child neglect if they left a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old at home by themselves. So I don't know where the cutoff is. And I think that would help me a little bit making this decision. It's something if we can't resolve now, we can go back to this.
Trustee Robinson?
Is there, a lot of unattended 9 and 10-year-olds on a regular at the libraries?
I couldn't speak to what happens in the individual branches yet, so
I would not say a lot, but there can be, and I would also say that it's not the job of library staff to be their parents and to, like, if we have 5 parents come and drop their 8-year-old or 9-year-old off, that's a lot of responsibility for the library staff to manage. But, right,
Okay, is it problematic? Or has it been in the past?
can be.
Bus?
So do we have feedback specifically from Pinehurst? Because I know there was somebody that spoke at the public have their child come do that anymore, but would the Pinehurst staff be in favor of something like this? Or is there pushback from librarians that want to change or limit kind of what the way it was done, do you think? I would think 14 is a very standard babysitter age. I don't know that it would be if there's a law on it, but certainly that's completely standard to have a 14-year-old be a babysitter. And I would think that would be fine if there's an older sibling that's 14.
Trustee Robinson?
So I just Googled and it says Idaho doesn't have a law that specifies the age at which a child can be left at home alone. However, the American Academy of Pediatrics says that children between age of 11 and 12 can be left at home alone for a few hours a day. Well, children 8 or 9 should only be left alone for 30 minutes. So that kind of answers your question a bit, does help. And honestly, you get up to age 13 and I think they're worse. Behavioral wise.
Director?
So I just want to kind of go back to some of the motivation behind some of these change, or the things I'm presenting here. So I know I bolded it, maybe it doesn't need to be bolded, but the community library network does not act in local parentis. And to me, that's the fundamental concept behind all of this, is that we don't act in local parentis, and therefore it's really important at what age we're setting this, and it also becomes really important as to who we're allowing to be in local parentis in regards to a babysitter. So we're not gonna be in local parentis, but we're saying a 14-year-old older brother is able to watch the 9-year-old, or 7-year-old, or 5-year-old. Then essentially we're saying that that 14-year-old sibling is in local parentis. The implication is that's what we're saying. I'm not sure if that's fair, or that's true, or that's legal. Because the old policy would just say, a certified caregiver, 14-year-old. Although I'm happy, part of this whole thing is me trying to say to the trustees, the library has responsibilities and the parents have responsibilities. So I'm trying to put it back on the parents to have their rights and be able to exercise those rights. So I have a little bit of difficulty with the parenthetical phrase, which says 14-year-olds or certified caregiver. I'm not sure if certified term, but yeah, certified. Okay, so I'm sure we're never checking that. We're never checking the certification of the caregiver, right? So these become very important when it comes to these policies I'm putting forward, because the fundamental concept here, even when we get to the children's, the act legislation, is that a lot of this comes down to parental rights, over their children and what they get to do and can't do. So I don't want to infringe on that, but I want to take it very seriously in the policies and say, okay, the library does not act in local parentis. It's not our job. It's never been our job to do that. And therefore, what age are we saying you can be in here unattended? Who's responsible for you when you're in here? Right? There's a certain implicit responsibility. If a 15-year-old walks in the building, libraries forever have just assumed that that child is there because their parent knows that they're there. We're not gonna check on it. They're there. The building, and this is why when we get to it later, actually even this one, parents and legal guardians are responsible for the minor child's access to the community library network buildings. Right, I'm moving away from this idea that, this collection, that collection, that if you're in the building, you have permission to be in the building. Assumed, right? If you have a card, then it's more certifiable that you have permission. The idea here is that it's not about the collection, it's about the building. This is the public library. If you walk into the public library, the library staff has not ever been required to verify anyone's presence in there. Right, we would assume that they are. So it's really, it's just finding that point where we say, okay, this is the unattended children age, and then this is not or you can be unattended. Then we hit 17 and boom, we move on into outside of the minor category. So within the minor category, right, the fundamental principle is the library does not act in local parentis. So who is in certain cases, who is for 9 and under, 10 and under, whatever number you set, doesn't really matter. It matters, but they not before I'm trying to do here. So anyway, that's.
Okay, and trustee Claus?
I guess I would ask for consensus to change what the director has here to, under the age, back the way it was, under the age of 9 or be supervised. The same wording, but I would strike the certified babysitter. I mean, what is a certified babysitter? 12, is a 12-year-old be certified babysitter? If it's just 14 or older, to me, that's sufficient. And no one's gonna check, so I would just put it back the way it was and strike the or a certified babysitter.
Trustee Robinson?
So going along that line, which I do agree with going back to 9, since we haven't heard that there's been any kind of issues in there, some smaller libraries where the kids do walk over there after school. The 14 and older part though, should that say that it has to be a relative of the 9-year-old or just like any 14-year-old that the parent says, yeah, that kid can watch my 9-year-old? I don't know. That's a tough one. I would think it should be a actual relative. But I don't want to, put in so much language that it's so rigid. And I just wonder if there has been any issues in the past with younger kids being in there.
I'm not prepared to give specific examples, but as a public library with children, of course, we're going to have discipline issues. Of course, we're going to have issues where we have to communicate with the parents and ask them to come and get their child. Of course, we have those things happen. It's part of being a public.
Thoughts?
I would, stay away from the having to be a family member because certainly, we hired babysitters at whatever, $2.50 an hour or whatever and they weren't relatives. I mean, if you know a good family and you've got a 14-year-old girl in it, that wants to do it, it doesn't have to be a family member.
Trustee Henley?
Could we just say a 14-year-old, that's approved by the parent? And we're not gonna check that either, but it leaves it open to whether it's a sibling or you can call it aunt, uncle, whatever, or it could be a next door neighbor that's 14 or 15 years old and then the parent of the kid actually doesn't mind that or likes that, so maybe that gives it some leniency either direction. Just to say that, a 14 or older, approved by the parent. And we're not gonna have a certification note to come with that.
Yeah, I think kids can be, or the 12-year-olds can be certified to babysit. So, so it could be children under age 9 must be supervised by you or a responsible caregiver. Would that be better? And then just leave out the 14 and older or a certified babysitter? Stanley?
I agree dropping the certified babysitter verbiage.
Okay, so do we have consensus on dropping the or certified babysitter? Trustee Claus?
I don't know what it takes to be a certified babysitter, but I've never heard of such a thing. And I don't think any families that I know of go looking for certified babysitters, so I would just drop that.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm in agreement with that, and so we have 3 dropping the certified babysitter part.
I'm fine with that.
Yes.
Okay, and you guys want to keep the 14 and older?
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like I don't know enough about can't even think of what a 9-year-old is anymore. I'm not around kids.
Okay, well, do you guys prefer the 14 and older staying there?
Again, like, the reason I'm presenting it as a policy packet is because everything ties together. When we get to the more complex points about the adult section and what it means and how the parents are responsible for their minor children, it's just important to keep in mind that if you set the age of 9 and the policy packet is considered as a whole and then you have that 9-year-old really moving through the building with a 14-year-old responsible person. And that is how the library has always operated, so. I just want you to be aware that the decision that if we're making decisions with this policy, I built it based on all of them being working together in tandem. So like when we get down to number 2C, right? 2C is built off of the rules of conduct 3.7, like they all go together. And so it's important to understand. All I'm saying is that no matter what age you set, the day-to-day practical application of that means that let's say the 7-year-old is in there being supervised by a 14-year-old. And depending on how the rest of these policies are dealt with, they're moving throughout the library freely. Used to, or did, looking at cookbooks or whatever. Okay, that's what this is about. It's not just about this policy. It's about how this policy together with the other ones tie back into my directive and solve what has been a problem here, I think, at least trying to be solved for years, or at least a year or so, right? So this is not just one policy I'm throwing out there, you know. It's a packet together that I'm trying to create, you know, reestablish an understanding of what a library is in the community, right? And so for the benefit of everybody, and basically solve is somewhat of a problem. It's not really a problem, libraries, but it exists and we have to deal with it. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind. That I don't mind going through one line at a time, but they're all connected. Because it's being built as a philosophy, as a principle on how libraries operate. But anyway, so again, so to me, it doesn't matter to me whether it's 12 or 9 or 10 or 11. What matters to me is that as far as my library staff are concerned, when they see people in the building, there's an implicit understanding that that person has permitted. Basically, the community library network is for adult access. I think I say that in one of my other policies. The whole thing is adult access. Anyone who isn't an adult in there has implied access. We assume that they've been granted access by their parent or legal guardian. And so we're just establishing at what age they need to be attended to, you know, supervised freely, right? But the fundamental principle is that the library does not act in local parentis, and therefore someone is acting in local parentis. Who is that? That's either the parent, legal guardian. If we establish it here that it's a 14-year-old, so be it. But someone's got to act in local parentis, but it's not going to be the library because it's never been. And I don't think it's our job to take that on. So that's all. Again, I just want to make sure that I don't want to run through this policy and make changes and then find out 4 pages later in another policy, oh, well, now all of a sudden that means something different. So they are, when I put them together, I put them together as a unit. So I just want to keep that.
Yeah.
Okay, so for simplicity, it might just be better to leave it at 12 and also for the benefit of the library staff.
No, I'm not saying that. I mean, I think there's valid reasons to go back. I'm just, there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm really, you know, worked hard to establish, sort of to go back to my directive and everything I kind of said in there. I didn't mean for us to belabor 12 versus 9. It's not the biggest issue on the table. The biggest issue is the community and everyone. It just in case they forgot to remember what a library has always been. And again, I want to stress that these policies that I'm putting forward here are not reactive policies to the way the CLN has been, right? These are policies that I'm putting forward as a professional librarian about how a library should be, right? I'm not reacting to the problems that have been here. I'm saying, okay, whatever, right? This is how a library should operate. You have this new legislation, right? I can, as long as I'm the director here, I can guarantee there will be nothing in the collection curated for minors that breaks the law. Period. No, just nobody in the community that's gonna want me to break the law. Right? It would be ridiculous. So I'm not gonna break the law. So the library doesn't break the law, 0 to 17. Knowing that, there's a lot of, you know, history or past concern about the collection, which now just goes away. Because we don't have to worry about that. So this policy is trying to show, or these policies together, along with the directive, are saying this is what a library has always been, and we want to continue to operate that way. We just need to find the sweet spot in regards to the new legislation, things like in local parentis, supervision of minors, those kinds of things. And that's why I'm not here with an adult access only policy. I'm here with 4 policies related to how the library operates, conduct, and, you know, if this was 1925, might say something like, you can't have any food in here, you can't have any drink in here, you can't have anything in here. But it's not. And now we say, yeah, you can have a covered drink. I still see that you can't eat food in here, and I haven't been here long enough to know which parts of the library you're not allowed to eat food in. But it's been a long time where people would order pizza into a library and eat it in the library. So there's certain things that have evolved, but the principle here is that the approach is a holistic approach. That's why there's a packet together based on the directive. And I'm hoping that we can get through it because we don't have to worry about the past, right? You know, how much of what we're facing today is because of things that were in the 0 to 17 collection, right? The requests for relocation that I've gotten so far, none of them are like, oh, I found this in, you know, in the adult collection necessarily, right? We weren't worried about that. So, and I don't want to go on and on, but I do want, as we look at these policies, we have to understand that this is not a reactive policy to the past. This is how a library has always operated. You know, these are rules of conduct, which are pretty normal for a library, right? We can set pages, right, as we wish. And then we try to integrate all that into the new legislation and how best to make that work, how to answer that the reasonable steps that's spoken of, right? But I do want to look at it from a fresh perspective, we're not reacting to the past, right? There will be nothing in the collection from 0 to 17 that is harmful to minors, period. Therefore, you don't have to worry that, oh, well, we need to really robust request relocation, or where are we gonna put this? It's not gonna be there. So there's stuff in there, which obviously breaks the law, so that'll have to be relocated, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, we don't have to create policies to solve that problem, because the problem won't exist.
Okay, trustee Robinson.
Thinking a little deeper on the 9 or 12 years old. A lot of times, you know, people refer to libraries as safe places, which they are, and they should be. But sometimes it makes it sound like they're a safe place because the employees are watching their kids. And it just hit me like, what would any of us think about somebody just dropping their 9-year-old off at Walmart and letting them peruse the aisles? Would we think that was a good idea? Would we think it was safe? Would we think that it was the employee's responsibility to watch these kids in Walmart? That we wouldn't. So maybe we should look at it more that way. Because it's not the sweet librarians, you know, because that's always in books, little sweet librarians, job to watch kids and keep them safe. The whole, a library is a safe place, I think means something different than you drop your minor children off and they're gonna be watched. So actually, maybe 12 is a good idea. And I know we're not supposed to spend 30 minutes on just this age thing, but it's just a different way to look at it.
Trustee Hanley?
I was gonna make a comment similar to what the director is saying, that I wouldn't want to look at this as a standalone policy absent what's contained in the other drafts. And so I have to look at this as a package. So even if we go through this, I would say, if we, let's believe we got through this one policy, I want to say it's tentatively approved by me, so to speak, until we see how it interplays and interacts with the rest of these, because I think it all is woven together somehow here. And I guess my biggest concern when I fully understand what's proposed here is that the material that's not in the minor section is actually not accessible if it's got material harmful for the minors, or how the conduct policies prevent minors from going into those areas. And there's some kind of some teeth in these policies that prevents that, or moves them out of the library, or restricts them coming back. But again, my understanding is we have to take reasonable steps. to prevent access, so. I did listen to the public, and I think it was the general feeling of this board that we didn't want to restrict the entire library to minors, with the exception of the minor stuff. I don't want to prevent them from having access to much of the rest of the library. I don't think that's what the public wants. I don't think that's what we want. So I'll see how that works and we go through these, but I would like to see a child be able to get a cookbook, or architecture book, a book on George Washington, or whatever they're doing homework on, and not have to bring their parent in to get to that book. But what the answer is, I don't know, but, I want them to be able to get basically the minors should get the minor section, minors should be able to get to the general collection. The minors should be not able to get to other areas, I think, so. Anyway, I'm probably okay with the 12-year-old thing here, because we're not locked, it's not locked in stone. I can get past it and say, oh, 12 is fine. And, if we change it today, or next meeting, well, so be it, after we understand how it interplays with the rest of these policies.
Mr. Potts?
I wanted to see if we could get consensus on what I changed up here in red. I want the 9 personally, because I don't think 9, 10, 11, 12 should have to have their parents if they've got older siblings or they've got a babysitter. By saying 12, you're making them so they can't come in the library unless the parents are there. So this is all I was looking to do. Can we get consensus on just the simple change?
I think I would lean towards 9, but just so that we can move on, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and say 12, so we have consensus of 3 to leave it at 12.
Well,
Director?
well, let's just say 9. So that as we go through it, as we see it unfold, we say, oh, wait a minute, 9 is too young, or, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's how it unfolds that's gonna matter the most. And as we go through it all, we might find, okay, wait a minute, that's too young, or that's okay. Because it really is gonna come down to what else happens down through this discussion. So it's probably safer not to approve it, but to say, okay, let's think about it as if they were, well, they're not 9, they're under the age of 9, so 8. Think of it as an 8-year-old as we go through this. And you might find, oh, that's too young. But if you think it's 12, then we're going on the high end, and it may get even nicer, but then we might be, you know, not giving a chance to the people who would prefer to be younger. So if we want to move on, I would move on in our mind that it's 8. Under the age of 9. I mean, I'm confused, but sometimes we say under the age, like 18 and older, is it 18 and younger? It's not, it's 0 to 17. 18's got nothing to do with it when it comes to minor. So we're saying up there, it's 0 to 8 must be supervised. It would have been 0 to 11. The 12 is irrelevant, really. It's just the way it's worded. So I would say move forward, thinking about it with the younger age in mind to see how it plays out.
Okay, okay, so trustee Fox would like the sentence, under number 1, supervise your child in the library. Children under age 9 must be supervised by a parent or legal guardian or a caregiver. 14 and older approved by the parents. Do you have any other agreement on that?
You said change it temporarily right now, it's fine with me.
I'll give you put 12 or 9.
Yeah,
Okay, well then, it sounds like.
The rest
we
of the
have,
sentence is okay?
well, that first sentence, yeah,
No, I mean, the rest of the red.
yeah, or a caregiver, 14 and older approved by the parents, sure,
Is it correct?
just so we can move on.
Yeah, again, I mean, approved by the parents is our way of saying, if something goes wrong and we have to engage in the rules of conduct policy, we're gonna go in assuming it was approved by the parents. If we were to find out after the fact they weren't approved by the parents, then they were in violation, right? So approved by the parents is fine wording, is just that everyone needs to understand that we're not gonna be checking approval by the parents. It's an assumed or implied, implied understanding.
Okay, so we have a unanimous agreement to change that in the draft. Then
This would be done.
Are we? Is the rest of that, 1A? Is everyone fine with that? To ensure child safety, law enforcement may be called if library staff are unable to locate the person supervising a child. Sounds good to me.
So are we on 2A?
1A under supervise your child in the
I'm sorry.
library. So the second sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got 2. Trustee Robinson, you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so we have a majority consensus on leaving the rest of that paragraph as is.
Which one?
1A,
1A second sentence.
the rest of it as it is in the director's draft.
Oh, if the A didn't copy when I did that. Okay.
Oh, gotcha, okay. All right, any other changes or moving on to number 2? Okay, hearing none, we are moving on to number 2. Be sure your child observes the library's rules of conduct. That sounds reasonable to me. Everyone else?
Yes.
Okay, and, so changing, the age of 12 down to 9 and throughout the whole thing, is everyone good with the whole 2A? If a child under the age of 9 violates the library's rules of conduct, the child's parents or legal guardian must take the child to the lobby or outside until the behavior is corrected. Trustee Hanley?
I think we'd have to go back to under age of 9, the caregiver, what do we call this person up here? What was the first paragraph? What do we call that?
Oh.
Yeah, the caregiver, I guess
right.
it is, that has to be brought into it.
Okay, so it could be the child's parent, comma, legal guardian or caregiver.
I would think so.
Okay, and so do we have agreement to change that there to the child's parent, legal guardian or caregiver and change that throughout this whole policy? Wherever it says parent or legal guardian?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes.
okay, so we have,
Until we learn otherwise.
Well, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't apply to some of the areas. Because sometimes, so from B, when we move down to B, it's not the parent or legal guardian or caregiver who would necessarily be called. I mean, you could say caregiver, I guess, but I'm just saying like, the other one is actually present. Some of these other areas, if we were to just change it, like a, find and replace kind of scenario, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure we would call it caregiver. We're gonna, because in B, we're saying we're gonna contact. Not sure if we would contact a caregiver, we'd be contacting a legal guardian or a parent. That's all. I'm just saying, I wouldn't do a find replace.
I agree.
Because a find replace won't apply.
Mhm.
okay, so we'll just change it in to A for now. And we had agreement on that.
Mhm.
Right, any other changes to 2A?
Can we read it in clean? Yeah.
Or wait, what was it? Okay, so if a child under the age of 9 violates library's rules of conduct, child's parent, legal guardian, or caregiver must take the child to the lobby or outside until the behavior is corrected. Okay. So that is the majority, and so we'll move on.
That's right.
Well, I should staff.
You're looking at your own notes. I was just trying to make it so that we all see the same thing instead of your notes.
Okay. Oh. Trustee Robinson?
To be clear, what, these changes are being done by the staff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the staff is doing that.
Yes.
I just want to make sure because in the past, there's been confusion of who has the document. And I would prefer if the staff had the document.
I just want everybody to see it. You agree?
I'm about the official.
Suggestion, share.
Okay, yes, I think that's right. Okay, so then moving on to 2B. Child between the ages of 9 and 17 violates, and all the rest of it is the same, violates the library's rule of conduct. The child will be asked to contact their parents or legal guardian in order to leave the library. Everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah, as long as I know where the children under 9 are. Got it.
Okay, and trustee Robinson, that was yes? Okay, so we've got majority on that, then moving on to two. Moving on. F,
Is that realistic that we expect them to call the parents, or would the librarian call the parents?
well, children frequently have phones these days.
Well, then,
And if they don't, then I would imagine the library would do the phone calling for them.
We could say.
Yeah, I mean, it says they'll be asked to, so we're giving them the chance to make that call. If they don't make that call, then they would probably be in violation of policy in of itself, and they were asked, and conduct is that they comply with each type of request, so it's all protected.
Okay, then, okay, so we had, agreement on that to change it to 9 and 17 instead of 12 and 17. If there are no further changes on that, then we will move on. Trustee Henley?
Can I jump back to what trustee Robinson said? I think it would be healthy if staff that's taking the notes now could also have access to the notes that are being taken by trustee Plus in case she missed something or whatever. It doesn't hurt. But their staff can be the official one, but I see no reason why we can't tap into what we're agreeing to on the screen here. It's not.
I'll send it to them.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so 2C, any changes to that one, or is that one good as is? Child attempts to access material deemed harmful to minors pursuant to the Children's School and Library Protection Act within the collections created for adults only. Without a parent or legal guardian present, the child's library privileges will be restricted as per the rules of conduct. Trustee Henley?
I would say nay. Maybe they stumbled on it instead of will. It doesn't give you a lot of wiggle space as making a decision as staff. So I would think that the parents will be, instead of maybe restricted, I think it gives the staff a little bit more ability in case the kid picked up a book by mistake, or, yeah, you asked them one time and they moved out of a particular aisle, and so what, that's good enough. But if they go back a couple of times, well, then obviously we have the ability to boot them out the door.
Okay, that works for staff to change that will to may.
I just want to make sure we're not losing the importance here. Everything you've been struggling with for the last year or so is contained in 2C. And 2C speaks to
Okay.
the rule of conduct 3.7, and it's actually solving the issue. What we're saying here is that if the child attempts to access material deemed harmful to minors, which they will not find in the 0 to 17 collections, we're not talking about that. We're saying if the child attempts to access material deemed harmful to minors within the collection curated for adults only, without a parent or legal guardian present. So this directly relates to the law. Our way through the law is the fact that, and even in later parts of the law, the last couple paragraphs, if the parent is there, then that's it. We're indemnified. That's like there's nothing wrong. So this is a very critical part of this policy packet. I'm just hoping that's why I'm presenting, right? It's not just about the will or may. What we're essentially saying here is that we will be giving freedom to the minors who walk throughout the building. And it's their responsibility not to access anything harmful to themselves. So they can go get cookbooks, right? And they could go get George Washington biographies, but they can't go get something in the 300s that deals with, sexuality, or they can't go get something that's harmful to them without their parent there. So this is a critical piece of what I'm trying to present here. So I just want to make sure we don't just worry about the may or the will. And whether we talk about that now or whether we talk about it when it comes up later, but it's all, like I said, it's a packet.
Okay, so it's better to have it stay as will.
No, that's not, I'm not saying no, may is fine, may is fine, it gives more freedom to the staff, obviously, but it's fine. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as what I'm presenting is actually the solution.
Trustee Fox?
So this gets to the core of it. Like you're saying, the statute that got passed this last year, and the statute nor any other law Idaho has makes it illegal for a minor to wander around in the library. There's no statute, either city ordinance or anything, that makes it illegal for a child to go look at a book like that in the library. That statute doesn't make it illegal. So the library can't enforce that. They can make a policy that the librarian is supposed to shoo people away or make it so they can't get to it. But this, we don't have a legal, we can't call the police if a child is over there looking at those books. And I assume they would be marked with, big area or something, make it really clear that you're not supposed to be there. But we don't have any legal recourse if they go look at it, is my understanding. What we do have by the statute is the library district, is required to make those books inaccessible to to minors. It's adult access only. So I think this isn't, frankly, seeing the other policies that you've got in there, I just don't see how we can go this direction of saying it's illegal or you're gonna, get your library privileges taken away, because there's no statute that backs us up on that. And I don't know what other people think of it, but I think all we can do is make it unavailable to them.
Director?
So just going back to the fundamental principle, the library building is an adult access only building, insofar as a child that goes into that building, we assume has the permission of the parents. I mean, so having said that, 0 to 17's got nothing bad in it. The adult collection in all CLN branches are designated as collections for adults. They were curated for that purpose. The collection development librarian picks them. Adults only, they are designated. I mean, the legislation is totally fine. Whether it was necessary or not, I mean, that's a whole other story. Common sense would suggest that, a librarian who's collecting for children would have made decisions about what should be in there or not, regardless of legislation. But leaving that aside, the adult collection is for adults only. If a parent wants to let their child access it, then that's the parent's right, unless, of course, the legislation says the parents don't have that right, which I don't notice in there. But also, I want to get away from this idea that adult access only has a capital A and a capital A and a capital O, but it doesn't in the legislation. But it's not like we have to have a place which says adult access only. The legislation is asking that we have an area designated for access by adults. And if we flip it into a quotation mark and add capital letters to it, it becomes a noun, it becomes a thing. But it really isn't a thing. All we're saying is we curated this collection for adults. It's only for adults. We'll have signage which says so. And whether a child goes into that area is the parent's responsibility. We don't act in local parentis. It's the parent's responsibility. So I'm trying to propose a solution that is sort of a combination of everything I said in my directive, those 3 prongs. It enables the library to operate as they always have. Because there have always been things in the adult collection that children shouldn't read, right? The parent, I say that, but even not as a parent, like, if you go back to Geoffrey Chaucer, I mean, that's way back, right? That's a long time ago. And even people like John Dryden and others were hesitant to translate Chaucer from Middle English to other more modern English, for the Wife of Bath tale, the Miller's tale. So, and then eventually, but eventually, you know, authors for children would translate those down to the children's level. So there have always been things in the adult collection which a child shouldn't necessarily read. Whether it's the Age of Lawrence, even Tolkien, right? There'd be subject matters in there that they shouldn't read according to the, you know, norms of an 18-year-old in the community. You know what the wording is, you guys, that's in the legislation. So it's always been there. And I'm trying to propose that we operate as normally as we can and put the responsibility where it belongs, the parents, right? Because like I said in my directive at the very end, it's a question of qui bono, right? If 50% of the population we're serving is adults, 50% of the population is adults that have minor children, I should say, then 50% of our population have the ability or the right or the desire to walk through their collection with everything there. And then there's a certain percentage, would be 50% or even less, of parents with that age range, and we're giving them the chance to make their own decision about whether or not they want their child in there or not. Our reasonable steps, as I said in my directive, will be the combination of how we collect. Right? Nothing bad, 0 to 17, done deal. Top quality collection for the adults, right? Good quality, good decisions, professional expertise decisions made by a librarian. Okay. And clear layout, no question whatsoever. You know, beyond this point, adult collection, whatever the signage is, no question whatsoever where these things are. Okay. And then the third thing is staff responsibility, which speaks directly to the rules of conduct, right? It's just the staff's responsibility to take care of these things. So that three-pronged approach is tied in with these policies I'm presenting. So I mean, legal counsel can speak more to what I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just saying that this is the rule of conduct within our building. Right? There's probably lots of rules of conduct inside buildings which aren't necessarily laws, like legal or not legal, but in our building, we'd like people to do this or do that. That's all this is. This is not a law. This is a policy in the library. We're saying that if a child attempts to access material deemed harmful to minors, because the only way to get them the George Washington biography cookbook is to let them go into that area. But, you know, in, you've got 779.2, that's art, right? Human figures and their parts. These are just Dewey descriptions, like 613.9, sexual techniques, hygiene, reproductive tech. 155.3, sexuality and gender. 306.7, sexual relations. These Dewey numbers, when Dewey made them a long time ago, right? We're going to have stuff in the adult collection. So it would be harmful for a kid, you know, child to necessarily access some of those books. I'm not sure how many we have in each of those Dewey numbers, but they exist and they'll be in the adult collection, just as the Canterbury Tales will be there. You know, other authors will be the Children of Urine, right, by Tolkien. They're all going to be there in the adult collection. And we want to be able to give everyone the chance to use their library safely. But I want to be able to separate what the parent's responsibility is from what our responsibility is. And we don't act in local parentis. So that's kind of where I'm going with this policy. So this 2C is really important, because what we're saying is that if the child is skirting all the rules of conduct in our building, trying to get to, right, that book about painting or photograph, you know, like a subject heading, like, you know, about nudes and in photography, right? If they're trying to go get that, that's their parents' problem, and that's their problem, is not the library's problem. It would be the library's problem if it was in the kids section. That's why the legislation existed. As I said over and over again, but in the adult collection, it's a totally different ballgame. So I just think it's important to realize that what I'm saying with 2C is that we're going to do everything we're going to do as professional librarians to create a normal library that's accessible to adults, right? And minors accessing certain areas is up to the parent or legal guardian to decide. And we will enforce that, as it shows in the library rules of conduct, that it is, you get to, but there's, and I didn't even have to change that. That's specifically in there. It's like at the end of the first part, it's It says library staff will intervene to stop prohibited activities and behaviors. There's another thing. It wasn't even something I added, right? We've always intervened to stop behaviors that we didn't find acceptable in our building. Whether it's eating pizza in the corner or seeing a child specifically skirting the rules and signs and everything in our building to get to a certain point, which we know is there because we're in charge of our collections. Like I said the first time, we are responsible for our collections and other people are responsible for themselves. But we know where those Dewey numbers are. We know that a young adult series, which by young adult, we mean 18 to 30, whatever. We know that that series contains something and we're in charge of it. Minor is, under the supervision and care of their parent, so they're in charge of the minor. Whether that minor tries to skirt the rules to get what they want, that's really not our concern at this point. We're taking all the necessary reasonable steps that we need to do as an institution, and then the parents are responsible for their children. So, again, I wasn't trying to say somehow I'm powerful enough to make something illegal. I'm just saying that if the children in the library policy, which ties right into the rules of conduct, if 2C is happening, we will step in based on our rules of conduct, and they may or will or whatever be restricted as per the rules of conduct, because in the rules of conduct, we say we will do that. So it's kind of circular situation.
Yeah, I think I'm over here.
Oh, Trustee Robinson?
So in rules of conduct, I particularly like the obey all library signage and comply with all library policies. And I believe that's a big part of, that would go with 2C of children in the library. I like what most of these policies do together, grouped together. I am concerned about the library cards for minors. I'm assuming that means that back to, I think what was said, excuse me, last meeting, where all 17 and under would only have minor cards. Is that correct?
No. So the library, again, I don't mean to take over how this meeting operates. I mean, I'm just here to serve the trustee of that, but no, the library card from policy is based on the in loco parentis idea. We're not in charge of the children, parents are. So I don't mean to jump there, but number one, parents or legal guardians can authorize their minor child to have a library card, period. The way it's always been. You want to have a library card, you have a library card.
And any of the cards we have existing right now, you mean? Is that what you're talking about, or just?
Well, they can have a library card. So number two, a minor with a library card is being, by its very nature, is being granted access by a parent, legal guardian, to all the collections of the community library network. This is the way it's always been. Nevertheless, pursuant to the act, a parent or legal guardian must accompany a minor who is accessing material deemed harmful to minors located in the collection curated for adults only within the community library network. So in other words, if we're super successful and we have a sign, so you're in Post Falls and you pass the juvenile section, the children's section, there's a big sign which says, collection beyond this point, and a parent walks hand in hand with their 17-year-old, probably not hand in hand. Parent walks hand in hand with their 14-year-old, right, to go get a young adult book, which has stuff in it, which they think their kid's mature enough for, they're the parents, right? They have to be there, right? Otherwise, the child can't get that kind of stuff. But if their child is going to go get the George Washington book, then we're not saying the parent has to. And again, I'm not saying what you have to do. I'm just saying this is how we could operate. So the parent doesn't have to walk across that threshold with them, because we're not involved with it. So I've been a parent too, right? So I am a parent still. So if the 16-year-old gets on the phone, so hey dad, I gotta go do research on George Washington. I'm gonna go to the library, and go get some books on George Washington. I'll be home there. I don't know that in the library. None of the librarians know that. We're not privy to that call. But we see the child come in, they walk into that section. We do know where George Washington biographies are. They go there, they get it, they come to the desk, they check it out. That's how libraries always operate. If that child says that to his parents, but then actually wasn't going to do that, was gonna go sneak over to another section to get something harmful to them, that's on the parents, that's on the child, it's not on the library. I guess some will say, no, it is on the library because we're not allowed to provide them with any access to these things. This is where there might be some disagreement. We are making the necessary steps. We have designated this area adults only. And again, bears repeating, there's nothing harmful in the 0 to 17 collection, period. Boom, that's done. Okay, in the adult collection, the question is simply, do we neuter that collection completely? Right, so that every minor can walk through the whole building without ever possibly stumbling across the 300s or the 792s or whatever number. Or are we saying we've taken the reasonable steps, we have the signage, we have the clear delineation of locations, we have staff that care and are responsible for collections, know where things are. Basically, I'm just saying this is how we always operated. And yet we're fulfilling the law because we're taking those steps, we're making it clear, and we're also collecting well. It's a professional expertise that we have and no one else has. No one else has. That's our job, right? We're librarians and that's what we're supposed to do. So all that bundled together is how this works, right? Because we're not privy to a child's disobedience of the parents. It's not our responsibility to know whether the child lied to their father that they wanted to get a George Washington book, but instead wanted to get something else. But if they're in our building and they're going towards something that we know a section, or they think that they can get it off the shelf and come to the desk and check it out with their card, right? At these points, the law would kick in and we would say, you know what? You know, you can't circulate that book. It's deemed harmful to minors. So that's 1 and 2. Number 3, right? And it's maybe a subtle difference, but it's a big difference. Parents or legal guardians can opt out of authorizing their minor child obtaining a library card, and instead they can authorize them getting a minor library card. It's the parents' responsibility, not ours. We don't have to build elaborate multi-tiered library cards to satisfy this legislation. It's the parents' responsibility. So if the parent says, you know what, I'm really grateful that the new director has guaranteed that there's nothing harmful from 0 to 17, and I want to protect my children from anything harmful in the 700s or whatever, then I'm going to opt out. And I'm going to go with the minor library card. And that card only gives them access to, well, it says right there, right? As a lot of the other iterations of this policy had. So, yeah, I hope I made that kind of clear. It's basically, it's a parent is in charge of these decisions. And we're presenting them with the best possible library we can.
Okay, so I understand where you're coming from, and generally, I think, you know, the simple solution is best. However, our parents and our community have spoken, and it needs to be a fit with our community because that's what the library is for. And they've said that they want kids to be able to access the general collection.
That's what I said, though. I mean, just so that real clear. The principle here is that they are accessing the general collection. I'm not sure if I said, if I didn't make myself clear.
I guess one of my main
Trustee
questions,
Robinson? Sorry.
one of my main questions was, are the 3 cards still available for a parent to get their child? Or is it not?
Well, no, so with the policy here being presented, it's a library. The library.
Okay,
Yeah, the parent can come in and say, I'd like to get my child a library. And they get them a library. And they know, as they have always known, that there are things in the adult collection. So the only the difference here, just to be quite simple, is that parents might not have known that there were bad things, illegal things, let's say, use that term. They might not have known there were illegal things in the 0 to 17 collection. And lo and behold, over the last couple of years, they find out there were. It's terrible. Everyone gets upset. How come they're there? Right? Legislation comes in. Okay. So let's put all that aside. Because there isn't anything in the 0 to 17 collection that will be harmful to minors according to the law. I'm here to direct that, and that's going to happen. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about the adult collection. How far do we want to go in the adult collection for one constituent group? Basically the 9 or whatever, the 12, the 17 and under group. Either we restrict them completely, right, from the adult collection, or we give them access to the adult collection. But honestly, I'm trying to take that off the table because it really doesn't have anything to do with the library. The library has created an adult collection for adults. That's why we did it. When the collection development person is buying a book for adults, they don't think to themselves, oh, I wonder if this is good for minors. They don't. It's for adults. So they're buying it for adults. It's only for adults. That section is made for adults. We have a sign which says it's for adults. If a minor wants to get in there, that's up to the parents. 100% up to the parents.
Okay, so who's next?
I think he spoke a lot.
Okay, trustee Hamlin?
I'll be short. I don't really understand the words curated for adults only. I mean, to me, that's interesting, but I also am concerned primarily with, I think legal called it overreach. And I feel as if restricting minors' access to the general collection is probably overreach. And I still don't quite understand why, not that I brought up today, I think I did in the past. Why don't we take the genres that most likely do contain material harmful to minors? And that's the adult section. That is the adult, we don't put adult access only, but that is the adult collection. So we have a minors collection that's physically there where minors go to, and then we have an area that's a general collection. Minors can go there as well. And then we have an area that's adult area, and that's for adults only. And those are the times for that group of shelves, because I'm not really a big fan of having to segregate and pull individual materials and put them in a special room. I just think that it's burdensome for staff, and I won't say it's stigmatizing to go as an adult to go in there and get a book, but I think that doesn't sound like it's in line with normal library world. And I just think that we know, I think I know, I don't know, that the fiction area is probably a prime, and maybe the psychology or sexuality, whatever the Dewey Decimal Code areas we want. There are probably some specific, and then we can have a few things that are found later on. Well, let's move them out of the general collection, but I don't know why we can't have a minors and an adult and a general collection instead of being so restrictive, because I really don't think a 13-year-old should have their parents' permission to go over and get a history book. That's my quick spin on this right now.
Actually, I like that idea. Trustee Moss?
Yeah, I wanted to address what the director was saying. We really need, it sounds to me like we need a general collection. All we've got now are these different age groups of youth and teens and, minors that those cards access. And then there was a minor card that would let a minor order a book from home online that actually could get it from Liberty Lake Library, but now it can get it, I guess, from any CLN library. But they wouldn't have to have their parent with them if they had that card. And that was to get the access to the entire library. And a lot of parents want that. Why can't we have a truly adult access only that are these Dewey Decimal Codes that you listed off? And they're over in one section, very clearly marked, with some kind of boundary around it. But it's the Dewey Decimal Codes. It's anything that is truly adult only. The rest of the general collection seems to be called adult. So this is where the atlases are and the cookbooks and the different history books and where George Washington. Why do we have to keep calling that adult area? We need to designate those Dewey Decimal Codes and truly adult access only and put them in one corner where we can see if somebody's going there. Then I could buy into this. But we need to allow parents to let their children, their minors, check out books with their card that are in this, what I call general area. And it seems like we have to change the name, but we can't just keep calling the whole library adult and then say, oh, we're just going to watch if they walk in a certain area. We have to not let them go into the adult books the adult access books, we truly have to make that separate. And I don't know that we can just take shelves of books and restrict it, because then we get into the First Amendment issue that they used to have access to it and now they don't. They have to be harmful books for us to be legally able to keep, I believe, separated, or they used to have access. But we have a lot of parents who gave a lot of feedback last summer when we tried to just say these cards will only work for the minor areas. They want what I call the general area. So I'd like to ask, if we get a general area and an adult access only area.
That would be my brother's director.
Yeah, maybe I'm not explaining it. Well, it's written here on the page, like library cards for minors. The default is a library card that everyone has. It's a full access, there's no restriction on it. So that I'm not even going anywhere near the idea of restricting parents. It is just a library card. It's always been the same. It's the parent who's deciding, hey, I don't want my child going into the adult collection because I'm aware, as I have always been aware, that the adult collection contains things that I don't want my child to stumble across. I mean, there's only certain ways that people can get things out of the library. They can have a known entity search on a catalog looking for a specific thing, or they just browse. Right? If this was a closed stacks library, like New York Public back in the day, a closed stacks, we wouldn't have this problem. They have to come to the front. It's only known entity searches. They would know what they're looking for. So the real problem here is browsability. They stumbled across something. That's how libraries operate, right? But in this case, I hope I'm making it clear. I'm just saying the parents get to decide what they want their child to access in the library. If they opt out of a regular library card, we created a new one for them, the library card for minors, or a minor library card. It's that card that the protective or, parent, the discerning parent says, I want that card for my child. Doesn't give them access to the database. Doesn't give them access to PIN. Doesn't give them access to the adult collection to check out stuff. It limits them because that's the parent's choice. We're not doing anything about it. We're just saying, listen, this is a library card. If you want to opt out of this because you're aware that there's stuff in the adult collection. Okay, so that, having said that, I just hope that's clear. I'm the opposite of what I'm hearing. Like I'm totally 100% in favor of parental rights, right? In every facet of our lives as parents. Okay, so but to go back to the other point, I'm not sure I understand the difference between, let's separate out the adult, as in the term that you would say about like an adult movie or an adult store. Okay, so if that's the term, right? And if we're going to separate out the adult area, put books on a shelf in a corner, what's the difference between that and my suggested appendix about a special collection? The only difference is that there's some walls around it. Like, and that's only logistic. If we had all the space in the world, sure, we could throw it into a corner and have a sign. But if in my directive, I actually offered that as an appendix, like, and I said basically, right? The directive is a proposition for the direction that the CLN should take within the community to rediscover what it means to be a public library. All three prongs of the approach to fulfill the Children's School and Library Protection Act are fundamental characteristics of a properly functioning public library. Boom, done. Nevertheless, if it is the will of the elected officials governing the CLN to pursue a designated adult access only route, right, then I go on about how that's a possibility. So it's certainly within the realm of library operations to have a special collection or to separate out. I'm not a huge fan of separating things out because I'm a librarian, right? So there's a trend in the library world where we should make our libraries look like Barnes and Noble, everything out facing, all mysteries here, all this. Yeah, libraries, we're not that sick. We're a different entity. We do things in alphabetical order. We use the Dewey Decimal System. We don't put things, and just as an aside, like in the world of libraries, it's sometimes a struggle for librarians back in the days, okay, let's separate out all mystery, and let's separate out inspirational and create a little section. We have sections in the library right now. Inspirational altogether, if I'm correct in some places, right? It's a trend. I mean, one of the trend is going on for decades now, but that the principle for some librarians will be, no, boom, cataloged, right? It sits on a certain place on that shelf and we don't separate it out. And then it's like, oh, no, we gotta give everybody what they want. So let's take it all out and we'll put it together for a new sign which says mystery novels. Right? And they're all together, and this is all together. So it's not far fetched. We can do that, but I'm not sure what the difference is. I don't see, in my mind, I'm not seeing the difference between what I proposed as a special collection, because there was no regulation, there was no like cameras, there was no lock on any doors. It was basically just a special collection. It could sit in that room or it could sit outside that room. Right? It's possible. My director was simply saying it is possible. And I'm here, again, like I say, I'm here to just present to the trustees how libraries operate, and how we could be. If that's the route the trustees want to take, that's fine. That's totally fine. We can do it. All I'm presenting is, this is how libraries normally operate. Parents are the ones who should be making the decisions about what they want their children to read and see. We're going to make it safe because there won't be anything in the 0 to 17 that's harmful, so we don't need to worry about that. But every parent from time immemorial has known or worried that in the adult collection, general collection, whatever you want to call it, the university library collection, anything you call it, there's always going to be stuff in there. And that's the parent's responsibility to take care of their children. The libraries have never been required. I don't even think this law is about that. The law is about protecting minors from areas that they would normally go and not be bombarded with things that are harmful to them. I mean, I guess we could read the law saying nowhere in the library at all should they have access to this thing. If that's the case, then puts us in a very difficult situation, right? But I don't think the law is saying that. Legal counsel can correct me, but it seems, the spirit of it seems to be that, listen, we don't want harmful things in the children's collection. And that's a no-brainer. But to say, let's now apply that law to the adult collection, general collection, to me is more difficult, because libraries have never really collected books for the adult collection specifically with minors in mind. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, it's not really been what we've done. We can do it, but it's not what we have done. So, again, maybe I'm going around and around in circles, but I just don't see the difference between what's being suggested, where we pull the items out and we have, so if it's this room, over in that corner, we have a few shelves and the sign says adults. And then over here, we've got the rest of the page says general, and then you've got kids. So I'm not sure what the difference between that is, and that I now all of a sudden wall that room in because I happen to have a room with walls and doors and glass, and see if that was gonna fit. Or, so we're talking about the room in Post Falls, just over here, it's got the glass stuff, okay? So if we put it there, then we took those walls down, there'd be no difference. It's still, it's a segregated area where we're saying this is for adults. So I'm not objecting to it, I'm just saying I already proposed that
So we
as
don't
an
have
option.
general, we don't have the general section. That's what I'm asking.
I understand. Like, do we create a third section? Basically, like, let me just take inspirational, for example. Inspirational fiction is separated out. All these got a little label on the sides as well, a little dove or something, depending on how we process them, and it's its own area. So we have done that before, but again, I just don't see the difference between what was proposed in the appendices of my first document and this. So it doesn't really change a lot in the policy packet I'm presenting now, except, a couple of words where you'd say, they have access to everything but, so.
Yeah, it sounds like most of the trustees would like a special collection, and a general collection and a minor collection.
Even your space.
Okay, trustee Robinson?
Okay, so I am trying to follow all this because I was very confused on how many cards were gonna be available. There are minor cards available, if that would be number 4 on library cards for minor policy. Number 1, a parent can give their child a library card, which would be basically all access, except the only way 17 and under could check out the George Washington book is if the parent was physically with them. No?
No, this guy, so,
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me re-ask that real
Yeah.
quick. That 17 and under can't physically walk into, if the signage says adults only.
no, so again, I'm sorry if it's not clear. Just forget everything you know about the last couple of years. And go back a little further. Parent walks into the library, so they like to give my child a library. Librarian gives them a library. Done. That's it. There's a lot-
Now that person has access to the entire
Yeah,
thing. They can
so,
check that.
so when a minor walks into the library building and a librarian sees or staff, the implicit understanding is that this child belongs here because they have permission from the person who governs their life. We don't check it, we don't ask them, but it's an implied understanding. They walk in this place and I'm assuming your parents know where you are, right? If the parent gets them a library card, it flips from implicit to explicit. It's now explicit permission to engage in activities in the building because the parents have given them a library. So it goes from implicit to explicit, just like that, right? You could call it certified, you could call it pre-approval, call it authorization. That's why it's worded parents, but you can authorize your child to have a library card, period. And the sentence, right? And then number two, that card gets you access to everything. But by the way, there is a law in Idaho, right? Which means you shouldn't be accessing things harmful to yourself. Right? The spirit of that law is that you shouldn't be accessing things harmful to you. The implication of the law for us as an institution is that we should be taking reasonable steps, right, to not let them access that. We're going to take reasonable steps. Like all those reasonable steps are in there, built in. So that's number two. Now, number three is going back to the idea of in loco parentis. Number three is saying, hey, you're the parent, you're 100% in charge of your child. If you don't want them to have a library card, which gives them access to the whole library, like you always had the right to do for a millennium, too long, here's centuries. Okay, then there's another option. You can opt out of that and you can go with this library card for minors, which only gives them access. And number four is actually word for word from your previous draft, but it only gives them access to the 0 to 17 collection, really safe for them, right? And it doesn't give them access to CIN, doesn't give them access to database. So that's all a bundle, which I know you're all familiar with, which was there before. So that's what the minor card is. And it's up to the parent to make that decision. They can opt out of what is a normal library card in favor of the restricted one. That's up to the parent.
And what's consistent with every single instance he just described is that the library policy requires the physical accompaniment of the parent or legal guardian when a minor accesses those materials that would be deemed harmful to minors. That is not an exception under any of those scenarios.
No.
But we cannot prohibit the minor from accessing that material if the parent wants them to and the parent accompanies them. Right? That's the line here he's drawing. Does that make sense?
Trustee Henley?
I think the discussion's going back and forth different ways, meaning the library card is not necessary to enter the library. And so I've heard a lot from the director of being critical. Well, the library card gives you access to that adult collection. No, it doesn't. You can walk in the library without a library card. You can roam anywhere you want to in the library. So you don't need a library card to get in and out of the library, nor to get to different areas of the library. The library card has to do with checking books out, if I understand correctly, or material in general. And I guess when not reading through the entire law and making sure it's not out of context, the law kind of specifically says that the institution gave or made material harmful to minors, or the institution failed to take reasonable steps to restrict access to minors, by minors, to material harmful to minors. Now, I know that might have to do with a lawsuit issue, but the spirit of the law, my understanding is, we want to restrict access by minors to material harmful to minors. And I don't think I have any, I feel very confident and what the library's director said many times, that the 0 through 17 collection will be fine, good. I feel comfortable and confident that's probably what's going to happen. I don't understand how we're going to restrict access adequately to the rest of the collection. I don't want to restrict access to the whole collection that's not minor stuff. I don't think that that's what, and I don't understand how segregating a few genres is considered overreach. But yet we can restrict access to everything that's not minors, and that's not overreach, and that's okay. I can't get around that. If I understood correctly in the past from listening to council, we can't restrict certain genres to minors. But yet what I'm hearing now is we can restrict everything that's not minors to minors. If everything else is not considered minors, it's all adult, and therefore it's acceptable to restrict all that. So I don't, and I have no problem if some parent wants to bring a, hold them by the hand, so to speak, and I don't know if it's a 17-year-old and walk in some area and take the sleaziest book in the entire adults. I have no problem with that. If the parent's with them, great, or a guardian. But I don't understand how we're saying it's okay to restrict everything that's not minors. But it's terrible. We can't segregate certain part of the collection. I don't get it, because I think we know, and we could restrict the genres that do most likely contain material harmful to minors. And I'm in favor of doing that. I don't want to see the rest of the collection off limits.
Mr. Bus?
So when legal counsel was going through these, saying that none of this is exception, I completely, either I don't understand, but I don't agree on number 2. I've got highlighted here. This card that the parent is given is a wide open card. The parent is given it or allowed the minor to have it. But what about, how is that card different than any other adult card? And it seems to me like this card in number 2 lets that minor on his own go order any book from CIN, CLN without the parent being there. It lets him come into the library without the parent being there and check out any books. I guess the librarians could stop him from getting a book in these Dewey Decimals that are off limit, but I want a card that the minor, I do not want the minor to be given, even by their parents, a card that lets them check out any book they want. If we were to make a general section that has the George Washington and has the cookbooks and has other things that have been in the adult section that are different than these Dewey Decimal sections, that card could let them have access to that general area, even at other libraries, maybe even over at Liberty Lake. But we have to be able to prevent, even if a parent says, I want them to have this card, we cannot, as a library, we cannot let them get books that are harmful to minors, whether they're written for adults or they're written for children. We can't give them access to them. So I don't think this is even viable. Number 2.
Mr. Robinson?
So I'm liking how this is all coming together and looking. I mean, it's probably not perfect, but I'm understanding it better and I'm liking it. Let us not forget that our material selection policy, we've been told, is going to disallow horrific books coming in, even for adults, because as we've been told that the library, that's not what the library is looking for. So I don't think that the adult section has the amount of harmful to minors books that people are acting like that we have, or that they think we have. And if there are some, it sounds to me like they're going to be actively weeded out eventually, or the reconsideration or request for relocation of material. That would be from, I would assume mostly the minor section, but, a parent has the right to let their child read I always say Stephen King book, because there's some weird Stephen King books that I know parents that don't want their children to read books that have talking animals. That is considered harmful to minors by some people, not by the law, but some people. If you take the word of our librarians and believe that the books coming in are not going to be books from, what is it? Somebody brought it up, this tore down the street. That's not the type of adult section that we have in the library. I just don't quite get this. A child's gonna stumble upon a book in the adult section that's gonna be so harmful to them, or that they're actively looking for them. And maybe some kids do, and maybe it's in the 700s, is that the art? And I suppose there's a big, some parents wouldn't think that was harmful to minors either. And I guess under the law, the nudity part, I guess, but would that even hold up in a court? I don't think it would. Because the whole taken as a whole and artistic value, cultural value. I just think we're really getting hung up on things that aren't a problem and aren't going to be a problem. And I wish we could look at all these policies together and just realize that parents do have a right, number one, that's the one thing I wanted to get out is parents do have a right to say, I want my child to have access to the entire library. And we haven't talked about it, but the request for relocation is part of this new law. If a book is found and I won't go into it, but did a minor obtain material harmful to minors in the collection curated for minors with the Community Library Network as defined in Idaho Code section, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes to the process. I mean, there's a process to go through, and to my knowledge, well, there's been 2 books that somebody filled out the request for relocation material, or was it, okay,
There's been,
a third? So I just think that I don't want to use the term making a mountain out of a molehill, because I know there's laws that we have to follow, and there could be problems in libraries, but I just don't think that a child walking through the adult section is going to be as bad as everybody's acting like it is. And there's steps in the process that would be taken if a minor came across a book. And there's going to be signage, and that's part of the taking reasonable steps. There's a lot of reasonable steps being taken here to not only prevent the library from being in trouble, because it's not about that. It's about not harming minors. I understand that. But I think these reasonable steps do both. Interest class?
So briefly, that book that you just maybe described, that it had to be relocated to an adult curated area. This library card at number 2 will allow that child to go get that book. We just went to the trouble of moving it out of the minor area because it's harmful to minor, and it went into the adult section.
That's
And
not
there
true.
it sits.
No.
And this card gives complete access to the entire library to this minor that the parent gave it to. And if the parent is not with them, either they do it online at home and they order the book, or they come in and get it. That card, we can't have that option because.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but
that
that's to a,
book- no,
that's to a
that
child
book-
who has,
no,
the parent
I-
gave
I
access
listen
to
to
them.
the floor
That
for some
parent-
reason.
Gave access to it, but the law says that book is harmful to minor. It's been determined by the process. CLN cannot let a minor get that book. It can't be put in an area that this card lets, or that a card lets a minor get. It has to be put in some place that only adults can go to.
Okay, so we are not getting very far. I think it might be an opportune time to take a break, and we might be well, likely staying later before, because we do have some other things that have to be done today. So 10-minute break, or do you guys want a 15-minute break?
No, because I have to leave like right after, like, I can't be here past 4:10.
Okay, so 10-minute break then? Okay, all right, 10-minute break. We'll be, start back up at 3:45. All right, it is, well, 3:46, and we are back to order. So we are slogging through hard here. Is there something that has to be done today in order for you to deal with the books that have already been challenged?
No.
Okay.
Again, this is important work, so whatever it takes, but, no, I have to deal with the ones that I have, and I'm still moving forward with the thing I've indicated. There was 17 collection. Things will be easier moving back into my office here shortly, so that'll make the process a little easier for me to move on to that step. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it's really important that we, establish these policies. So that's fine.
Okay, Chris Foss?
On the request for relocation that you've received, there's what, 3? Or are there more now?
No, there's 3. Well, there's 3, one's done. There's 2 active.
We had specific timelines in the existing policy, and I think they've kind of been ignored. The staff had, I think, 30 days.
Well, they're not ignored. just-
No, it's
Well-
10 business days. And then it's, if it's deemed not harmful by me or the library, then it gets bumped
To the,
to the trustees for 30 days.
okay,
When the decision is finally made, there's 5 days within which the response is required to the requester.
we've got 60 days total from when the request,
Only if the first round, that is the staff, the library, deems it non-harmful. It doesn't get bumped to the trustees if it's deemed harmful. So I'm meeting the timeline of 15 business days to reply.
okay, well, somewhere or another, we have to have a start time. So,
Well, it's from it's from the moment it's requested. Like, as soon as I get the request, I'm, kicking in the process that, so right now it's difficult. The request comes in and the book happens to be out. And it's due back in 14 days. So even the one I currently have, I can't remember the date I got it by email. I just received the book to review, right? So I lose a little bit of time, but that's fine.
but I would like to have a, either notification to the submitter or to the board or somehow of when it was logged, when the request came in. And I'd like to.
Yeah, so-
Or have assurance that we're meeting our deadlines.
Yeah, so that's fair. I did reply to, so that wasn't part of the process. It wasn't indicated in the process that an immediate response of not like a acknowledgement. I've added that.
Okay.
Not added it in my mind. So the latest one that I have, I did respond with an acknowledgement that it was received. Told them about the timeline, the date that they can expect a response. So, yeah, that'll be, moving forward. And again, some of them are like go directly to the website. So I don't know if the website has a direct, thanks, we received it. But this latest one got an email from me saying, yes, I received it.
Okay.
So, and then that triggers the 15 days. The only difficulty I have is if I don't get a hold of the book. But like I said, getting my office here back, and being able to streamline that process of getting hold of the material.
Okay, so, we have 10 minutes left of our originally allotted time. Should we extend it and continue on with the policies, or should we skip to the discussion of library trustees vacancy? Trustee Henning?
I would suggest we jump to agenda item number 5 regarding the vacancy and then go back if we can, my preference, and continue and try and make some progress with where we were.
Okay, that works for me, Trustee Robinson.
That sounds good to me too.
Okay, well then, so we are possibly temporarily tabling the rest of the discussion on the policies and jumping to agenda item number 5, discussion of library board of trustees vacancy and appointment for Idaho Code 332716. Okay, I have. Okay, so I had a written statement for that because I didn't want to forget any pertinent details that the trustees and the public need to know. So per Idaho Code 332716 3B and D, I'm officially declaring a trustee vacancy within 30 days as Mrs. Campbell is no longer a resident in the CLN district and resigned last month. This vacancy must be filled by appointment of this board within 60 days and is a non-paid position. This trustee will serve until, this trustee being one that we would appoint in the future. This trustee will serve until the winner of the next library election is installed in June of 2025. So I don't believe that we're ready to appoint a trustee today, but for future reference, according to CLN bylaws, Article 3, Section 6, all meetings are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. And Robert's Rules of Order states that candidates shall be nominated by a member because if no member would nominate a person, it is unlikely anyone would vote for them. However, individual trustees are not required to nominate a candidate and certainly not required to nominate someone they don't feel would make the best trustee. In no event may a member nominate more persons than there are places to fill, according to Robert's Rules of Order. In this case, it would be not more than one nomination per trustee. And as per custom, unless trustees agree to change it, nominees will be given a chance to speak for up to 3 minutes and then answer questions when we get there. After all nominees have spoken, we vote on the next trustee and they are sworn in immediately. So I figured we would discuss how we want to proceed from there. Those wishing to be appointed as the interim trustee must live within the Community Library Network district and may send the board or director a not overly long description of why they are interested and what qualifies them. To accommodate our ability to read them all, my preference for this non-paid board would be half to 1 page. Does that sound about right to everyone else? Because I know our time is limited, but does that sound good?
What was that last part about the half page?
So when people send something in saying, I want to be a trustee and this is the reason why, that I don't want there's just no way we could get to, if there's 30 responses and they're each 10 pages long, we just can't do that.
Okay.
So I was thinking half to 1 page, but what do you guys think?
That sounds good.
That would be the preferred.
All right, so just so the public knows, half a page to 1 page, describing what you think qualifies you and what we need to know. Let's see, so will we be ready at the November regular meeting to nominate and go through the whole process, nomination and voting and all of that?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, Trust Plus?
You didn't say, but it takes a majority to vote, and there's 4 of us, so is that 3?
Yes, it would have to be.
It'd have to be 3. So,
Yeah.
okay. And if we don't get that, how do we get to 3? Do we make a motion and have a second vote and a third vote, or does somebody have to volunteer to resign, or how, I mean, what's the process?
Right choice voter.
Don't think, oh, rejected. No, I think that's addressed in Robert's Rules of Order, and I don't think it requires a motion. I think you just vote again, and then people can change their votes. And no one is required to drop out, but certainly they can if they want to. Trustee Robinson?
And I would assume if it was just like a 2-2 split, that, you know, and we tried it again, it's still a 2-2 split, then we would just have to repeat.
Yeah, because according to Robert's Rules of Order, you're not supposed to push people out or they can voluntarily. Director?
This request to the public to just submit the page, do we want a deadline on that? Like if you need, if we're gonna be posting it, like with the general public and they're submitting it to me or trustee, that process, you gotta figure out, but is there a deadline that you have time to
When is the next meeting?
do this in the 21st of November?
Yeah, we're about 2 weeks out from our next meeting, so as soon as possible, and I would say probably not closer than 3 days, because we need time to
Yeah, no,
look through
it doesn't
them.
matter what it is, I'm just saying, I just wanna make sure that when it's released out to the public and we're receiving them, you know, if there's a cutoff.
Yeah, so we should,
Trustee Henley?
no, I agree, we should say by the close of business on date X so that we're playing fair, I guess.
How about the 15th?
A little bit early, that's the Friday before our Thursday meeting, but it should, unless we get lots and lots of responses, I would think it's only gonna be a handful, but I don't know, I prefer go closer, maybe a Monday or Tuesday before the Thursday meeting. And sequentially, process-wise, what you read there, so the responses from potential nominees go to the director. We have to say, then the director is gonna send that off to the board, I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe that's a given, but anyway, I don't think we need a lot of time to absorb them all. Maybe I'm wrong.
okay, and perhaps it would be, kind of like a soft date, like, okay, this is our priority date, but if one comes in after that and it's really good, but it would be better to get them in sooner than later, just in case there's a lot. Trustee Robinson?
Yeah, the 15th gives them 8 or 9 days, actually 10 days. 9 days. Unless you wanted to put it on a weekend, that's fine with me, do the 17th. I think the 8th, I wouldn't, if it was into the next week, the 18th, no later than the 18th.
Do you have a preference?
I think I'd prefer by the 15th, so we have. Good, because are we allowed to talk to them? Or I guess that's what the questions are at the meeting.
Yeah, we would, yeah.
But somebody has to nominate them for them to be able to. 10 people submit their request. There's only, can be no more than 4.
Right, so only the nominees would be given the 3 minutes each. Trustee Robinson?
I think you can talk to them. If they email us, I mean, if people email us, we can email them back. I don't think there's a restriction, is there? Didn't
would
you
think-
talk to your
yeah,
person before?
I would think it's the only way you would know if you want us.
Yeah.
With the board, with the chair permission. I would think if I'm potentially nominating someone, I would need to speak to them personally
Right.
before I just say,
Yeah.
yeah, the paper looks good, I nominate this person, so I do think it's important, yeah, I would agree. There shouldn't be any restriction, but we shouldn't talk to the person as a group.
Yeah, and I would say that it's probably the trustee who's gonna nominate someone. It's their responsibility to find out if the person does indeed live in the Community Library Network district, not in Coeur d'Alene or outside of our area. Okay, so we are gonna be doing that at our regular meeting. Is there anything else that we need to discuss or decide regarding nominating and the whole process of appointing? Trustee Bloss?
Did you state it in there? How is the director going to notify the public? Does it just go on the CLN website? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that what we did before?
I
But basically, this notification that you're reading today, it's,
Well, yeah, I think the difference maybe, I wasn't here, but if the nominees are being generated by known entities of the trustees, that's, so for example, if all of you had a nominee in mind and you can only do one, and you get 10 people from the public you don't know, none of them are gonna make the cut because you already have them, right? So it's more a question of you're getting people in the public who are interested, and then you're individually vetting them for the, whether you want to nominate them. So it's just it's part of a process, like you're allowing for this, but in the end, if you all had four, if you each had a nominee in mind, then it wouldn't matter how many you got in, because essentially, it requires your nomination. So we're just being open to the opportunity to open up to the public. But it doesn't preclude the possibility that you would have your own nominee in mind. It's not an interview process for a job that's open to. That makes sense. So,
Okay, so it sounds like you've got that wrapped up. And without objection, then we will go back to the children in the library policy. We're on section 2C. Excuse me. Oh, yes, Trustee Robinson? Oh, yes.
So I move that we extend the meeting for 10 minutes to 4:10. Oh, well, you can extend it longer, just I can't stay. It's up to you.
Okay, everybody stay longer,
Yeah.
4:30?
Okay.
Okay, you want to-
I move that we extend it to 4:30.
Okay, it has been moved to extend the meeting to 4:30. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. Okay, it is unanimous and we are extended till 4:30 now. All right, so the original question was on children in the library, section 2C, changing will to may. We discussed a lot of principles which are really important. But, do we have a general consensus on may, or we want the word will in there, so it would be may be restricted as per the rules of conduct, or will be restricted as per the rules of conduct.
We'll have to read the rules of conduct, yeah.
Fifth one?
So really, will is, I don't think we ever have that in contracts. Shall or may. So we're not saying shall. Shall is, it's required. May is the other alternative. So will, I don't know, that's kind of in the middle. I've been fine leaving it with will, but if I really wanted to require it, I would say shall. Or restrict.
I gotta,
Or me, Trustee Hammond?
maybe jumping back then, it says restricted per the rules of conduct, then if you say will, then you go to the, I guess, rules of conduct, and if you go toward the end of it, non-compliance with staff, ignoring requests or disobeying the direction of staff. And then your failure to stop, and then if the staff requests are not met, you'll be asked to leave the library, so it looks as if this policy hands you off to this policy, so I'm willing to go back and say will, because will forces you to go back. Anyway, I see a connection between these two policies. So if you say that your library privileges will be restricted per the rules of conduct, then you go to the rules of conduct and it says, as a last push, if staff requests are not met, you will be asked to leave the library. So, and it probably gives other options in here too. So I'm gonna retract my first suggestion of may and say will, because it sends you to another policy.
Where did you see that?
For the rules of conduct, a separate policy,
Which section?
page 2 at the very end.
I prefer may, but
I
I'm
don't
I'm
care
good
either way.
with will.
I don't want
So
to
that's
stick on it
fine.
all day.
And I like will as well, and sorry.
Trustee Robinson?
I like will as well, and rules of conduct on the first page also, under the first bullets, has different options of what could be done. So it the trustee said, it takes you back to this policy.
Okay, so it sounds like,
Council.
yes. Legal
And
counsel.
the very last sentence of rules of conduct is discretionary anyway.
Yeah.
It says could result in a restriction of library privileges. And so even if you say, well, there's still discretion, even if you say may, there's still going to be discretion.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sounds like we have a majority consensus that we're just gonna leave it at will.
I thought myself out of myself.
Okay. All right, so anything else in 2C?
Um,
And trustee Fox?
So the collections curated for adults only without a parent or legal guardian. I don't know whether I'm supposed to read that. Adults only, curated for adults only. That's our phrase that we're talking about in the statute. Or curated for adults only without a parent. Anyway, I'm a little confused on that. And then I still wonder whether this should be, if it's just the adult section. Now I'm confused about the general area that has the atlases and cookbooks and other things. Does that include that? So before we get too far on this, I want clarification on what the adult section is. If it's really adults only, or is it access only?
I think that with that phraseology within the collections created for adults only, that would work, whether we have a special collection that's just for the few books that violate the law, or whether we just have kids off limits to the entire, everything that's not specifically for minors. Is that correct?
I'd have to think about that. I mean, I'm not sure what that implication holds. So just for clarity's sake, in libraries, when we say adult collection, we don't mean adult movies, adult stores. The word adult in library, it just means not children, or this is the adult collection. It has no loaded implication like other community facets use the word adult. So you can use general, you can use adult, they're just kind of synonymous. So this is simply saying, so I could have written it within the collections curated for adult without a parent. The reason why I put the word only in there is because only is one of the more significant words in the legislation, right? Adult access only. It's implied though, you know, the collection is being curated for adults. The collection is being curated for adults only. The word only in that sentence, it's implied in the first sentence. So you can take it out. It's there because it's language that, you know, is pursuant to the law. So, but yeah, you just simply read it that within the collections curated for adults only. If they're there without per, so, anyway, just so if we want to keep moving forward, I'm using the word adult in the typical library sense, not in any other loaded sense that it might be used. And typically I throw the word only in there, even though grammatically it's not the greatest thing, because that's the language of the law, right? But it's implied. We do not curate the adult collection with minors in mind. We just, we never have, we never should. But we never have. So we curate the children's collection with children in mind. And we curate the adult collection with adult.
Mr. Fox?
So where do atlases and cookbooks go? Is that only?
There is the adult.
I
Unless
think
they're kids.
I keep saying this, but I think it's imperative that we make a distinction between what's really only for adults and what is general.
So the distinction.
Because people want their children to go to these general areas.
Yes, and then again, under these policies, they absolutely can. There's no restrictions. The distinction between adult collection and children's collection is being made obvious through reasonable steps like layout, collection development, signage. So there'd be no mistaking going into the adult collection. I understand what you're saying is that in the adult collection, there is the George Washington biography and the thing that would be harmful to a minor. Minor doesn't have permission to go into the adult collection from the library. This has nothing to do with the library giving the child access. This has to do with a decision made by a parent, right? or legal guardian. There actually isn't any other entity. Every single person 17 and under has either a parent or a legal guardian or some kind of legal person. I mean, I guess you could have, maybe there's people that don't, but that's odd. So the norm is that every single person between the ages 0 and 17 has a legal guardian. They're the ones that are giving access. Because they're making a decision at the very get-go to give them permission to enter the building and implicit, and giving them explicit permission by giving them a card. It has nothing to do with the library. The library has curated collections for adults, curated collections for children. Children's is safe, the adults is adults, and the parent can decide to have a library card or a limited library card, the one for minors. But unless legal tells me otherwise, the library is not giving the minor access beyond the point that says adult collection, however we do the signage, however we do that. The library is not giving them access. The parent is giving them access. And that may be a philosophical or some sort of, legal or linguistic jump in the mind, but that is essentially what I'm saying. That it is not our responsibility. We're not in local parentis. It's our job to create a wonderful library, which we will. It's the parent's responsibility to decide how they access them. And then we build all these rules of conduct actually to make our job easier. So in other words, we're giving ourselves the right to see the person go into that section, which we know has something harmful to them, or let's put it the other way. They got in there, parents gave permission, and they brought it to the desk to check out. We're not allowed to give them access to that material, so we can stop them at that point. So you can't check that out. No, you can't check that out. Well, according to our rules of conduct, in order for you to check that out, your parent has to be present to check it out. So just to play it out, just to keep it simple and play it out. 15-year-old comes in, enters the building, librarians all think that the implicit knowledge and the permission of the parent goes to the 15-year-old goes to the cookbook section, to read cookbooks for about 20, 30 minutes. And then after they're done with their cookbooks, they slip over into an area which the librarian knows has stuff in it. Okay, what's going on there? We go in there, we say, hey, this is stuff deemed harmful or whatever. Okay, so you can't be accessing this stuff without your parent there. Or maybe we didn't see that. They checked that they got it off the book and then they came to the desk to check it out. Again, we have the rules of conduct and we say, hey, sorry, you can't check out this book. It's deemed harmful to minors. Obviously, you got it from the adult collection. Obviously, you have permission to be in the adult collection, implicit or explicit. Oh, you have a card, so it's explicit. Okay, but you can't check it out without your parents because the law says so. Right? The law says that it's defensible if we think that that they're with their parents or someone we thought they was their parents. It's implied in the law. It's kind of, I don't know if it's explicit in the law, but that with the parent being there, they can do whatever they want. So we are covering our bases as an institution because we are not going to give the children access to things that are harmful to them. We have signage everywhere. They can still walk freely. Right, we're responsible for our collections, so we know where the things are. We're also responsible for collections, so at the checkout counter, we're not going to let them do that. That's against the law. It's actually in the rules of conduct, under the illegal part. There's some things that are inappropriate, and there's some things that are illegal. And so we're just building it into our policies, our internal policies, to show the world that we have taken reasonable steps to protect children from things that are harmful to them.
Interest plus?
So I think this paragraph is confusing. The book that was taken out of the minor area that is harmful to minor because it was reviewed and decided and it's been ruled on and we know it's harmful to minor is been put into the adult section. We as the CLN authorities cannot allow a minor to go over and peruse the shelf and look at it. Now, maybe there's rules that we'll have here that the librarians have to go stop them, but we have to make that area with signage or, a certain shelf or something. We have to make it very clear that this is for adults only. and I think it does need to say for adult access only, because that's where that book has to be moved. It can't be moved into the adult section that has the atlases, might be scattered around different places. It has to be adult access only, and if the librarians are gonna take it on themselves to go get minors moved out of that area if they see them, I guess that's fine, but I don't think it's gonna happen very easily. That's why I wanted it locked or a certain cabinet, maybe up by the front desk, where they can watch it easier. But we can't just put it in the adult section and just in this sentence call it an adult section. It's not just that they can't check it out, it's they can't get the book and stand there and look at it for 20 minutes or something. It has to be adult access only, in my view.
Council?
I'm just having trouble following this logic if it's not tied to the discretion of the parent, because the library doesn't dabble in what's inappropriate, it dabbles in what's illegal. And it's not illegal for a minor to access a book that's deemed harmful to minors if they're accompanied by their parent. So the library can't take the next step and say, well, you can't access that even though your parent says you can, right? And so
This is if the parent's not there.
right, and if the parent's not there, now both the parent and the minor are violating library policy. And just as soon as our reasonable CLN staff see any reasonable articulable suspicion that the library policy is being violated, they'll reference children in the library and the rules of conduct, and they'll inquire how and when and where this child has accessed that material harmful to minors. And then they will attempt to contact the parent, and they will confiscate the book. They will ask law enforcement to show up if the child is not compliant. But we can't give children rides home. We can't give them accommodations here if their parents aren't okay with that. And so the entire process is the whole library is an adult access zone, right? And if you want to unlock the key to the library facility for a minor, the parent has to consent to that. We can't let children in here when their parents don't want them in here. So it's a voluntary system where the children have access because their legal guardian are granting them that access. And that's the basis that forms the fertile soil of this policy, that the child's here because their parent lets them be here. And that's a reasonable assumption for the staff to make. We have no concerns with them being in the minor section. So now we're going to say, okay, the child's here, but the adult collection is curated for adults. So that's an adult only section, and the children can't be there. If you want a key to unlock the adults curated section, the legal guardian grants that. We're saying no need for a key because the minor section has been assured that it does not contain that material. So the parents, the children, the library, everyone knows there's no debate. Whatever in there won't meet the legal definition of harmful to minors. But the discretion of the parent to allow the minor to access that section likewise is not going to be inhibited by the library. So we couldn't say a child can access the minor section if the parent says the child can't. That applies equally to both sections of the library. So we're avoiding viewpoint discrimination and content-based discrimination. We're not talking about Dewey Decimal numbers or what types of fiction it is, right? And so now that a child's at the library, whether or not their parent is here, they step foot into the adult collection, right? Children are in the library. We're assuming they're going to be going into the collection curated for adults. Not everything in there is harmful to minors. So they have a right to access that material. Why? Because their parents have granted them that right. The only right they don't have is to access material harmful to minors without their parent being physically there to accompany them under Idaho state law. So the sweet spot here, in order to not get sued under the federal rules and to not get sued under the state law, is to maximize the parental authority over what the child can access, while not restricting what the parental authority can grant access to. And the best way to do that is to understand that the adult collection is curated for adults. And even though there's material harmful to minors in it, doesn't mean it's obscene for adults. So we can't remove the material for adult access because it's harmful to minors, because adults have a right to access it. So what's the next reasonable step then, right? Because we'll get sued if we do that. We say, oh, wait, I forgot. We're not their parent. So is their parent going to give them access to it? right? That's the operative question. And so what I see us struggling with right now is not a debate about is it harmful or not, is it there or not, what section is it in? I see us talking about two parents with two children with different preferences using the library, and we're trying to pick which parent gets the say. But the library can't do that. The library has to say, unless you violate a library policy, we don't care what the parent is going to give their child access to, right? So I hope that helps frame it.
No,
No?
the
Yeah, I think
question,
it's helpful.
Okay.
the question comes down to, parents gave the card to let them go in the area, but the parents aren't there physically.
Right.
And I don't think Idaho law lets us as CLN let them go over to, the minors go over to look
We're
at those
not.
books.
Because it would be a violation of CLN policy.
How are you going to keep them from going over and looking at those books?
We're not. The parent is
The
going.
parents aren't there.
Well,
The
then they're
parent
violating
gave, the
policy.
parent gave them the card to go into the area,
Okay.
and check out books from the area, but
Not materials harmful to minors when they're not
Not material-
accompanying them.
But how do you stop them from perusing those shelves? Unless you make it very clear, this is harmful to minors and we have something in our policy saying we're not going to allow it. We can't say it's the parents. Let them go look at it because the parents aren't there. It's only if the parents are present that they get to
Yeah,
look at
and
that.
so the librarians will, I don't want to say be on the lookout, but they're constantly walking through the premises. And as soon as they notice something, without being overly intrusive onto the patron's right to peruse, they will delicately and appropriately inquire as to whether there's a parent accompanying the minor. And I think in terms of mitigating our risk for getting sued under state law, not a policy or religious or philosophical statement, but in terms of minimizing our risk for getting sued under the Children's School and Library Protection Act, that would be probably as far as we want to go. And if we start getting more intrusive, then we start implicating other competing rights. And so what I would say is we don't want to pick which parent's philosophy is the better philosophy, but we build in a healthy number of steps. You come into the library, you're using the library, you to agree to our library policies, right? And that means minors cannot access material harmful to minors unless they're accompanied by an adult. You agree to that implicitly, explicitly by using the library. The minor agrees when they get the library card, right? And they're also agreeing that if we notice a minor is not accompanied by a parent and they have materials that are deemed harmful to minors, we're going to inquire or we're going to call your parent. You can expect that. And then if it happens and there's no cure, then you'll get restricted from your use for the rest of the day, or you'll be trespassed for a year, or whatever is appropriate under the rules of conduct, right? But the more anticipatory we get on the violation, the closer we get to an impermissible restriction on a First Amendment protected right. That might be a good way to describe it. The more we try to anticipate and predict a violation, the closer we are to intruding upon some patron's right to access material, inquire, peruse, read, that kind of thing. So how far is too far, right? That's the judgment call you guys are going to have to make. But also think about it in terms of, if I'm a parent and I want to give my kids access to the entire library, can you tell me no as a governmental entity from doing it?
I think yes.
So I want my child,
It's
Right, no,
the
I'm here
difference is
with my
on their own,
child.
on their own
Oh, you're with
versus.
the child.
I'm here with my child,
That's
and
different.
I say, my child has access to the entire library.
What about when you're not with the child?
When I'm not with my child, then my child cannot access material harmful to my.
And we can't define that because we've never put an area that says these materials are harmful to minors. And right now, we're dancing around it. We don't have that.
Right.
So we have to wait till a kid picks up a book, go in and see what book is, pick it up, flip through the pages. For a second, I'm sorry. So I don't think right now we're saying we even know what material is harmful to minors. The law doesn't say anything about what books or material is checked out. It says access. that's to me questionable, I don't know. It also says, if I'm reading it within context, the institution is not allowed to make the material available to minors. So I don't really care what the parent says at home. If they're not in the library with them, we're not allowed to give them access. At least that's my understanding of that. And, so that's my, thought, Carter. Yeah, so I don't know that we've ever identified what material is potentially harmful to minors. And if we don't define that, identify an area or a group of stuff, I don't know how a librarian, so it's a police the library.
Director?
Again, I'm not trying to answer to anything, but just to, establish the playing field here. From what I'm hearing, basically, if we could designate what was harmful to minors, that would solve that problem. The solution isn't necessarily we take them all out and put them in another place. That's one solution. But before we get to the solution, I just want to be clear. The request is actually, or the question is, how do we know what's harmful to minors? If that's the question that I'm posed with solving in order to move forward with this, then I'll put my mind to that. But quite often what's being presented is how do we know we don't, therefore it must be pulled out and put somewhere. And I'm not sure that's a must be. It might be, but I'm just saying, I don't think we need to go right from that question to it must be therefore X.
Mr. Plus?
Right away, we've got 5 books that have been requested to be relocated. And if they are deemed to be relocated, I would say right there, we got 5 books. Where are they going to be put? They're going to be put in the adult access only, according to the law. Those 5 books, or however many there are, is the beginning of the place that has to be have signage saying, don't go here if you're a minor. And I think there's a lot of other books that you mentioned in the Dewey Decimal that could be put in there. That is to me the most critical thing right now. But these 5 books that we know that were in the children's section, we can't get rid of them because First Amendment, the court will get after us. But we need a place called adult access only that children, that minors can be told not to go to. They can't just be some nebulous scattered around in different shelves in the adult area.
Yeah, so first of all, there's 3. And I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it or not, but.
You can talk about what book it is. I mean, I don't like to go into the like, there's a process. And so we get the request, we make the determination, it follows the process. And so I don't want to be notifying trustees of books before the process is followed, that kind of thing. But I certainly think it needs to be entirely transparent what books have been requested, the basis for what the library is making their decision on, but we need to protect the patron information to the maximum extent possible. The requesters and all of that, we can't disclose.
Yeah, and I didn't intend to. I'm just saying, so basically, just so we're clear on, 1 was not in the kids section. It was actually in the adult section. 1, just for sake transparency of the Holy Bible. 1 is a book in the children's section, but it's not being requested by the minor or the parent of the minor. So even of the 3 cases that we've had so far, they're not super clear. They're not the kind that we might get down the road, and we'll probably won't get very many down the road anyway. But anyway, so that's what those are. But anyway, besides the point, I'm not sure why we jump right to saying we need a place, because we don't necessarily need a place. We already have the place. The adult collection is curated for adults only. It's only accessible to adults. There's a sign there that says as much. that's the place. Now, we're deferring to the rights of parents. It's a good thing to do. And the parent is the one providing access into that space. There's a distinction, obviously, between parent present, accompanied, and then the implied permission to enter into that place by the presence in the building, by having a car. So the parent, in both cases, whether the parent is there or parent is not there, it is the parent, legal guardian, who is giving them access. So I don't know if we need a place, because we already have the place. The question is, and that's why I brought it up, the question is, how do we prevent the child from gaining access to materials that are harmful to them in the adult collection? That's the question. And so I'm not sure that the answer is a place. Well, I'm not sure what the answer is a place, because the law doesn't ask for that place. We've already given the law the place they asked for, which is a place designated for adults only. We already have that. And we will prove it by reasonable steps, signage, how we govern it, what we collect for, all that's taken care of. It's just the one piece that we've given, we've turned to the community and said, listen, parental rights, totally, parental rights, love parents, okay? We're giving them that. The one tiny part of this is, okay, there obviously are things harmful to minors in the adult collection. Parents have the right to give them access to the library. How do we prevent that stuff from getting into the hands of, right? Now, if we parse that even more, we don't even have to worry about getting into the hands of in regards to checking out, because that's a very clear interaction with staff. They're coming up, hey, can I check this out? Staff can stop that right there. So really, let's get rid of all that. So now we're down to only one tiny thing. Not tiny, but we're just so we can clarify. We're only down to one scenario. And that scenario is parent giving permission implicitly, explicitly for the child to wander through the whole library. And they either seek out on their own volition or they stumble across a material that's harmful to them. So how do we solve that? That's the only thing we need to solve. There really isn't much else to solve. We solved so much other stuff just in the time we got here, right? We solved the 0 to 17. We solved a lot of stuff. And then these rules, everything here is meant to solve this. The only one thing is, what do we do about the parent? Well, what do we do with the scenario where the one parent's philosophy in life is, hey, drop my kid off. He's over the age of 9. And so he can walk through the library freely. And I trust my child. He's working on a project, no big deal. And whether that trust is warranted or not, whatever, it's not our job. They find the material that's bad for them. So one solution is library staff will intervene to stop prohibited activities and behaviors. Failure to comply with this and any other established community library network policies could result in restriction of library privileges, immediate removal from the premises, exclusion from the library for a period of 1 day to 1 year, or an arrest, prosecution. This is clearly laid out there. The 9-year-olds read that, so, oh man, I have to get arrested. They're worried because we've taken reasonable steps, and we're showing it. And we're not some spineless, institution who doesn't value our integrity. We're librarians and we love it, and that's why we enter the profession and we care. And so this matters. And so it's like, okay, well, now we've taken the reasonable stuff. The sign's there, the parents know, they signed, they read this. In order to get the card, they gotta read this. They gotta read it and sign it, or whatever, however we create the library card sign up process, right? Maybe they get an email to them, whatever. We do this in every other part of our world. How many times we sign off on something from Apple, iTunes, whatever, you drive down at the bottom, agree. Okay, but this is for real, just like it is for them, and it's binding. So this is our reasonable step. They are not allowed, the children are not allowed to access material harmful for them. And so we are going to do what it takes to fulfill that. And I'm just proposing that as a solution. Obviously, if you were to pull all that material off, right, Geoffrey Chaucer, Stephen King, whatever you want, and put it in a room or put it on its own shelf without any walls around it, that is also a solution. And that's, of course, legally it isn't. I'm not sure whether that's restricted, but I'm just saying it's not the only solution. Another solution is actually this built-in rules of conduct where we're telling people, listen, you're not allowed to do that. That's against the law. So we're going to take that seriously.
How's the librarian gonna know they picked the book if it's not in that obvious area?
Well, because the librarians should, let's say, for example, any of the libraries other than Hayden or Post Falls, right? I mean, if I'm sitting at the cert desk in Pinehurst, Spirit Lake, Rathdrum, Harrison, it spans this way, I can see the whole building. Right? And I know where the 300s are. 300 collection might only, I might not even be anything in 300s, right? Or 790 or 610, like, it might not be anything there at all. But if there happened to be, we would know where it is. And we would also know that in the young adult section, which is 1830, right? We know which series have that stuff, right? And if we don't, then that's part of our job. That's part of our job. Maybe we don't today. Maybe my staff are watching this, they go, I don't know. Okay, that's fine. We'll get there, right? It's our job. And so we will know where the stuff is, and it's our responsibility. Is it trickier in Hayden, Post Falls? It's not super tricky in Post Falls. It's trickier in Hayden just because of the additions and how the building's laid out. But it's not impossible. It is our job. And so that's one way that we can solve it versus the other, which is to pull everything out. Obviously, a log cabin is not going to work because it's not going to be big enough, right? It won't be big enough over time. And because as the collection development person, not me, but as the collection development person for the adult collection, we need to be able to collect things for the adults. So now if we're collecting stuff in 613.9, and maybe we got 10 books in that, whatever. So now we would need a space, or would need to be, so that's why I originally proposed, and again, like I said, it was a proposal, should this be the direction the trustees want to move. I think it'd be very challenging to say we're just gonna have a shelf, or we're just gonna have this. Because we're talking adult here now. We're not talking the juvenile, we're not talking the 0 to 17. That's a totally different done. We're talking the adult section. So think about it. The adult section of all of CLN, we gotta worry about what's harmful to minors in the adult section, and consequently move it all into another location. It doesn't make as much sense as saying, hey, everybody, this is the adult collection. Buyer beware, parents, this is the adult collection. Don't just send your kid in there on their own. It's, we're not gonna say that's irresponsible because that's not our job. But I'm just saying, we are not going to construct our institution worried about that aspect. We're gonna make sure we cover all our bases, that we're responsible to the law, and that we are responsible to more than just the one demographic. That the parent who happens to have a child between the age of 17 and 0, whatever, versus everybody else who wants to have their collection free to move around it. So, sorry.
One suggestion?
Actually, we are over time, so we either need to make a motion to extend or.
At least enough for me to make a comment, yeah. I'll make a motion, 10 minutes.
Okay.
I move to extend the meeting for 10 minutes.
Okay, it has been moved to extend the meeting for 10 minutes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, we're extended for 10 minutes. Go ahead, trustee Hannah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, and I'm struggling how to solve this as well. I don't have any preconceived answers here. What if we had the minors cards? We had an adult card. We also had, and I don't remember the terminology on a minors plus card. The minors plus card would allow physical access to the adult area. But it wouldn't allow you to check out a book that's got material home for the minors. And the minors can still, not minors, the librarians can still monitor and watch where the minors are in the library. But by virtue of with permissible signature thing, giving them a minors plus card, it at least allows them into the rest of the collection. Because I won't even sign up. I'm not going to sign up on basically restricting access to the whole library for not whole library, but the non-minor area for the minors. I want them the other one, the general collection. But what if we said that by virtue of a parent giving a minors plus card, he signed for it, say, by signing this, that the minors are going to have access to the general whole collection, but they're not allowed to check out books for all the minors. At least the parent knows, because again, my guess is 90% of the time, the parent is not with the minor, at least especially for teenagers, and I wouldn't expect them to be necessarily. So just thought, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, just super quickly, number 2 on the library cards for minors policy is that card. It is that card. It is the minor. I mean, the plus comes from the fact that they're a minor. They are granted access by the parent to the whole entire collection, except that they can't take out anything harmful to minors. It's already, that's what it actually is. But number two is the minor plus card that you're suggesting. They are allowed access to the whole collection, but they are not allowed to check out or even access, right? The card is not about access, like you rightly said. It's about checking out. So here, in this particular part of this packet, this is saying the minor has been authorized by their parent to have a library card. Gives them access to everything, but because of the law, and because we take the law seriously, and that's part of our rules of conduct, they are not allowed to access things that are harmful to them. The parent could come in and say, I want my child to access harmful things. And I say, great, we can't do that if you're not here. That's it. That's the limit of the restriction. So
That condition is consistent regardless of what form of card you have, or whether you're a district resident or a patron or not. That condition applies to every minor accessing the library. No materials harmful to minor will be allowed to be accessed unless you're accompanied by your legal guardian. That doesn't change ever.
But we don't know where that material is,
Yeah.
where they are.
that's different than checkout though. That goes back to the act.
There's access.
Yeah, it goes back to act.
Yeah.
I just want to keep
But-
everything
but,
distinct
yeah.
because it goes back, it's different. That's a different issue.
You need to identify it so that child, that minor knows I'm not supposed to go to this row, or I'm not supposed to go to this corner. The minor needs to not be caught by surprise that he's in the wrong aisle. I think we have to identify the area that they're not, that's adult access only. You can't get away from
Well,
that.
we either identify the area or the material. But again, I'm not sure, I have to ask, I don't know whether or not whether it's true that the onus is on the library to do that, or whether the onus is on the child and parent.
How is the child going to know that I'm not supposed to be looking at the shelf?
Well, the parent,
Unless you, the parent's not there.
but the parent read all this, said, but it's their responsibility to raise their children. It's their responsibility to raise their children, which means it's their responsibility to know this, to pass it on to their children, to tell their children, you're going to the airport, don't leave your bag unattended. How's the child supposed to know that? Well, assuming the child hears it on the thing every few minutes in different languages, or the parent tells them. It's the parent's responsibility to tell the child how to behave. So these are the rules we have in our institution. It's the parent's responsibility to tell the child, listen, if you cross over into the area that's adults only, which is has the sign there, do you realize what's dangerous here? Hey, you guys are going to the movie tomorrow night. Do you realize if it says R beside it, you probably shouldn't go to it? That's not our world. That's the parent's world, their responsibility. All I'm saying is that we need to cover our bases, be a library, and follow the legislation. And I think that's what I'm trying to go for here. So I agree with you that we have a responsibility to either as librarians know where everything is, so that we're going to do that, obviously. But the other possibility is designation for the benefit of the person. That designation could be the single sign which says beyond this point, be aware that whatever. So that could be designation enough under the law for us to say, hey, we took reasonable steps. There's no way that a child didn't know that they entered into an area that could have. Does the law require us to go even further and actually pull all those things out, put it in a location, right? Or does it require, and one thing libraries don't tend to do would be to put a label on the side of the spine, right? We'll do that for genres and stuff. We're not going to say, we've never done like restricted or like on the side of the spine in the adult section, right? So I'm just throwing things out there for the sake of the one thing we have to solve. I think only one thing, and that is access to the harmful material in the adult collection, which the parent has given the child access to, right? So that's the one issue, not the checkout, because they can't check it out. They won't be allowed to. Their card doesn't allow them to. Their age that doesn't allow them to, right? The one issue is the child comes into the library with implicit permission from their parents to be there, explicit permission to use the collection because they have a card, and they're in the aisle and to be honest, this is the only issue for two of the libraries. Because there's no aisle that the person can't see at the desk in some of these small libraries. The lines of sight are so obvious, right, where they are. So it's not as big a deal, I don't think, you know, as we're worried about here, to solve the problem using the idea that the staff will be aware of where the collections are harmful and where that stuff is, right? Well,
So actually, so this has already been asked and answered, but there's just so much information swirling in my head. I'm just still a little confused. So child goes in, they can go to the cookbook section in the adult, and they can or cannot check out a cookbook.
they can,
They can.
they,
So are there books flagged in a system then that say that, okay, kids can check out these things from the adult collection, but they can't check out these things?
so again, like that, again, we keep going back to the same one single question, identifying the harmful materials, right? The really simple way to think about it is the child is getting a library card. There's no restrictions on the library, they're getting a library card. The parent is giving them access, parents signing off on it, they've got a library. The only thing we need to do is prevent them from getting material, whether access to or checking out a harmful item. Right, so that's the one problem. And that's two problems. One is access and the other is checkout. Checkout is pretty easy because yes, there could be things, that's an internal operation. We could put things on the record, something could pop up or whatever. So there are ways within the library world to solve that part. So I think that one's okay. The difficulty is, like we said before, right? The 15-year-old, he's in the building, he puts in permission, he's crossed over to the threshold of the adult access only area, that is to say the general collection, right? And he's gone from George Washington biographies to books on sexuality or something. And the solution, one could be that the staff are aware of this, just like they've been aware of so many other different things in the history of libraries, and they go over there and they say, hey, could you please not drink an open cup book in here? Could you please not, it happens to be 2024, 2025, could you please not violate the children's library protection? You're not allowed to access this material. Or we come in there, hey, did you know that this area, which happens to have dogs down here, but then they wouldn't be close together. Okay, so, they're in an area, you say, okay, do you happen to know this area has a couple of things, right? It would be no different, honestly, than 50 years ago, right? The librarian sees that they've gone into the 700s where the photographic books are, and the librarian might go over there, not because it was a law, but because they took their job seriously and they loved their job and they cared about people. And they say, hey, this is an area your parents want you to be here. You sure about this? Right? We would all do that. I think we know it's bad, right? It's pretty normal. So there's not that much changing in that regard. It's just that we have a law and we want to be very careful and we want to provide as much access as possible to the general population. But there's a certain group of the population who under the law should not have access to certain materials. What are those certain materials? How does the library know what they are? What obligation do we have to inform the child what they are? I'm not sure what the obligation is. Right, that speaks to the whole point of how do we designate it. Right? Do we have an obligation other than the signage which says, hey, don't go there or whatever, right? What is the obligation to inform, right, the child versus inform the parent? Because we have informed the parent already of things. So what is that obligation? And I think that's where we're at. I mean, I know it's slogging out and I talk a lot, maybe it's different for previous directors, but we're getting there. We're coming down to that final piece, I think, of just how do you solve that one particular aspect.
So,
Okay, we are actually out of time. We're going.
real quick, in Pinehurst, that one aisle that's adult, I assume there's cookbooks and atlases and George Washington history. But somewhere on that aisle, I don't know if it's all interspersed, mixed together, there are some books they shouldn't access. How is the librarian going to control it unless you put them in one area with a caution sign, or maybe a caution sign with a minor in the middle of it or something that you have to show them, don't go to here, or put it on the far end, don't go here. And I keep coming back to this. The law says adult access only. We have to, if we aren't gonna lock it up, we have to make it clear that this is where those books are. Even in a small place like Pinehurst, you can't Just expect the child to know.
Okay, so maybe we should, all go home and let things ruminate in our minds and, anyway, I move to adjourn. All those in favor?
Is it next meeting thing on here? Said special or regular?
Oh, okay, well, then we need to extend the meeting. I move to extend the meeting, because there's already a motion on the floor to adjourn.
There is?
Yeah, just,
It's just that
okay, I retracted
Alright.
the motion to adjourn.
I'll move to extend for 5 minutes.
I move to extend the meeting for 5 minutes.
Fine, yes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, it was unanimous, we are extended for 5 minutes. Okay, so moving on to set special and regular meeting dates.
November 21st.
Um,
No, it's still, the next meeting is November 21st on.
Yeah, our regular meeting.
Yeah,
It's
it's already
November
set.
21st.
okay.
we're not doing another special meeting.
Okay,
And
so,
if it's okay, part of that, there was the grand reopening in Athol. I would normally go to that. I have an immobile obligation, so I can't go to that. So just so it's
Okay.
known, I'm not ignoring it. I can't make that.
okay, hearing no special and regular, or no more special meetings, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. Oh, I move to adjourn.
It has been moved to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, it is unanimous and we are now adjourned.
Yay.